Hi, and welcome back to Amadeo Dispatch. We're so glad that you're here. We were just discussing before we turned the camera on that Brett is probably wearing the same shirt from the last episode, but it's okay.
It was like 5 or 6 days ago.
Welcome to point 4 in the upside. Is this smell okay?
Point
4 in the upside down kingdom.
Okay.
What did you think we were doing?
Most times it's like 2.0 and we're just 0.4. Is this a beta test or
Point number
POINT,
yes.
Not 4?
Okay, this is going to be an interesting episode. We are learning how to get back at our enemy, and in order to do that, we must love them. So Brett is going to open us up. We have two Bible verses tonight. Or
Going to be in Matthew 18, verses 15 through 18. I think that's what's wrote on the paper. It says, correcting another believer. It says, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. And if the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. But if you are unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by the 2 or 3 witnesses. If that person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Then, if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. I tell you the truth. Now, these are all in red letters, okay? So, 18, I tell you the truth, whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven. And whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven.
The second verse that we're going to read, second verse, same as the first.
Wait until down there so we don't confuse them.
Well, we can do that.
Okay.
All right. So, while I was studying this and was in my quiet time, what really came to my mind is a relationship that I have at work with a coworker. And when I first started at my job, she and I were pretty good friends. We were acquaintances more, I guess, or less would be a better word. And there was a level of disrespect. And I'm pretty thick-skinned most times, and I can take a good thrashing, but it just got to the point where it was in front of other people and I really didn't appreciate it. So I tried to approach her, and when I did, things just went south. And after the fact, I was word vomiting on somebody else that was listening. I just had enough, was really struggling with the situation, and was saying a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't have been saying. I shouldn't have been saying it in my work environment, but I should have just not been saying it in general. I should have been talking to God as opposed to talking to a coworker. But she happened to walk in on it, and of course that was horrible, and I felt terrible about it. And I actually tried to apologize. And a couple of coworkers have even told me, you've tried to apologize in front of us, and it just wasn't very well received. And it just happened that there was a special meeting that was called, and my boss at the time, asked if anybody else had anything to say. So I took the opportunity to again formally apologize. I had apologized to her in private. I had apologized to her again on several other occasions and did it formally in that setting. So I would consider that almost like a church setting. Even though it wasn't church, it was a professional setting, and it still was not accepted. She actually got up and she walked out of the room, and she had even said, well, we're not ever going to be friends. And I told her, I said, I'm not asking to be friends. I'm just asking us to be able to have a relationship, a professional relationship, because tension was pretty high. And I understand, like, my coworkers being frustrated because things were so difficult between the two of us. But anyway, when you are in relationships like that are very strained, and everybody has a breaking point, everybody gets to a way to a point where it's just you have had enough, and you do stuff that you're not proud of, which was me. I took a lot of responsibility in that situation, and you try to make it right, and when it's not right, you have to give it to God and treat them as, what did it say, as debtors, as tax collectors.
Mhm.
I just haven't, like, flung her off and said, away with you, peasant. I mean, my heart grieves for her. My heart grieves for her because I know hurt people, and she's a very hurt person. And that's what's happened to her most of her life. Just I know a little bit about her past, but just knowing how, just signs and things that she's expressed, maybe not so much verbally, but like in her body language, she's been through a lot. And I grieve for her in that. And if not anybody else is going to be in her corner, and even if she may not want me in her corner, I still pray for her. I don't ask God for forgiveness anymore, because I know God has forgiven me, and I don't take her not forgiving me as God's not forgiving me. Because my responsibility is done there. So I still pray, and I'm still nice. There's had to be boundaries. Boundaries. It's one of my favorite words. Boundaries. Boundary has been set, and it's just that we don't talk. We don't talk in a social setting if there are others in the room. We don't really even acknowledge each other. Um, that's pretty much what we've been told not to do. So her reasoning, she told our supervisor why she didn't accept my apologies. She didn't think it was sincere enough. I don't know how I could have made it more sincere, as
Probably
opposed
would have
to
had to been blood involved.
may have, or getting down on my knees and groveling. I'm not real sure, but
The main point of all this is, if you follow the word, you fulfilled your part of this. Whether they accept it or not is completely up to them. You can't make them accept your apology. And whatever mindset they have, if that's the world they live in, you're not going to change that. I mean, me and my wife talked a lot about when we were growing up, what was normal, what was abnormal. And a lot of people, especially the younger the generation, there's almost a generation between us. I'm 13 years older than she is. And we've discussed a whole lot about what you grew up with is normal to you, but it may not be normal to everyone else. And so there's a lot of that on her part that, I mean, we're not looking at it and saying, hey, she's just not normal. I mean, this just may be the way she's grown up. If she's had to fight her way through life,
and she has.
um, it's going to be tough. I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it. But as long as you've fulfilled what God has asked you to do, then it's kind of, they've got to own that now. It's up to them. If they don't want to accept that apology, that's something they got to live with, not something you have to live with.
The forgiveness is for you. It's
Right.
not even actually for that person. Jesus says later on in Matthew about forgiving 70 times 7, and the 70 times 7 is you forgiving, not you forgiving and them accepting your forgiveness and you still beating yourself up over it. It's you relinquishing that relationship to God and letting Him deal with it. And it can be tough. I have a family member that has asked for forgiveness. And I guess in retrospect, it's a lot along the same line. They've asked for forgiveness, but I don't think it is necessarily.
No, it's not the first time.
Yeah.
It's, I ask for forgiveness, you forgive me, and then I go back and act like I did
Yeah.
before.
It's not, I don't want to say it's not accepted, because it wasn't authentic. But when a person repeatedly hurts you or repeatedly oversteps a boundary that you've set, you have to maintain. You have to build something and you have to maintain it. I did a lot of studies on boundaries. He gets tired of hearing me talk about boundaries. I didn't have boundaries growing up as a kid. That wasn't something that was taught. And I think we talk about home ec, we talk about ag that needs to be brought back into schools. I think a class on balancing checkbooks and about boundaries and safe touches all across the board need to be spoken about. And I can tell you from experience, I've had countless women in Bible study where we have went through different boundary studies. We've went through boundaries for leaders. We went through boundaries. We went through boundaries with small groups. We went through mending the soul, and it seemed like there was another one.
And we've even bought um, in my son's life and his wife, they're experiencing some issues, or were experiencing some issues, and she wasn't actually part of the study because they've got now 4 very small children, so she doesn't have time. And so Tasia actually purchased a boundaries book, and they were both reading it, and both there was many times when we were there that the word boundaries came up, and also boundaries with your children. She went in and bought it and sent that to them, and so.
Boundaries are so important. And you think, well, boundaries, well, that's not loving somebody. Actually, it is. Because if you have, say, you have a person that is, they've offended you in some way, and you're upset, you're worried about a confrontation, the confrontation happens, they apologize, they say, I know I was in the wrong, I shouldn't have done that, and you accept their apology. Well, it's not much time later that they enter into your life again and they completely upset your life over the same, it could be the same situation or it could be a different situation. It really doesn't matter. But again, you forgive this person. How many times are you going to have to tell this person, it's okay, I accept your apology, but this just isn't acceptable anymore? Because if you do the opposite and you just go wicked witch of the west on this person and just like, is that really loving a person? Because now you're in the wrong and you have to form an apology to that person. So a boundary, setting it and saying, no, this isn't acceptable and I'm not going to allow it again. And when they say, well, I'm sorry, will you accept my apology? Well, yes, I'll accept your apology, but this isn't going to happen again. Because you need to be in a place where you have the mindset to be able to love this person the way that they need to be loved. And sometimes love is tough, tough love.
And just because you love Jesus don't mean they do. And so if their talent is pushing not necessarily your buttons, everyone's buttons, there's people out there that just live to aggravate the fire out of people. And if they know how to push your buttons and then settle you down and then push your buttons and settle you down, at some point you've just got to set that boundary and just say, okay, that's it. I'm not going through this trauma. I'm not going through this drama would probably be a better word for it. Drama again. I'm not dealing with this anymore. I have better things to do in my life than be upset over what so and so said, and then knowing they're going to come back and apologize, so that 6 months later they can step on your toes again. So if you set that boundary, then you're limiting how far they can go with that. I mean, you're the one putting up the wall that says, right here's where we stop. So,
well, as a follower of Christ, too, I mean, what better way to teach people about Christ than to lead by example? And if you tell that person, yes, I forgive you, and you set a boundary and say, no, this is not acceptable, I will not have this in my home anymore, what better example is that you're safe and you're healthy, your home is free of that drama or that negativity until they can get into a situation, if they can get into, if it's maybe debt counseling, maybe it's drug counseling, into like, an AA or an NA program.
another issue to think about is now we've started foster care again. And so we've explained to our foster child, um, if you have questions about how to do something, just be quiet and watch the people around you. And kids pick up a lot of their learning watching you or watching her. And so if they're seeing you set these boundaries, that better equips them to know how to deal with situations and how to set boundaries for that also.
Yeah. In our Bible study groups, we've talked a lot about we're a lot of women that are in the middle of our life, middle aged, and we're kind of raising each other. We're figuring things out on our own through scripture and through different books and leadership and whatnot. And we didn't have that growing up. I had a pretty rough childhood, and as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have boundaries, and I'm sure that others that was around when I was young can testify to that. Boundaries are difficult, especially when you have to grieve that relationship. I will say that it does get easier in some situations when you set a boundary. A person can be respectful enough to say, okay, I respect you enough to understand that what you're saying, I accept. In order to have a relationship with you, I accept your terms. But if somebody says, well, you're just flat out crazy, and I don't care for what you're I don't care what you say, that's not right, then yeah, it's gonna be tough. There's gonna probably be some tears shed with that, but he's about to read Titus 2:12, which talks about boundaries. There's a lot of boundaries in the Bible.
And we are instructed to turn from godless living and sinless pleasures. We should live in this evil world with wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God.
Wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God. So if there's something outside of that circle that is hindering either three of those, time to start trimming. So boundaries, God, I love the story. I don't know why. I just imagine when God was bringing the Israelites out of Egypt and they were complaining and they were tired and they were dirty and they were hungry. And one of our kids, you remember one of the girls that used to talk about chonkula? Said, Grandma, get out that chonkula. I think of God with a flip flop and just going back and saying, okay,
Get up!
get in the woods. We're going to talk.
Shut up and eat your manna.
But that was the boundary because he told them, I'm not going to allow you to see the promised land if all you're going to do is complain. Like you're going to die off. And when your kids grow up, they can have the promised land.
And if that was true, it is true now. But if it was very, that hard line in the sand, there'd be a lot of alive now that would never see the promised land because it seems to be a national pastime now where people want to complain.
So that is it for episode 4. Be looking. We are starting Ignite, Nights After Ignite. We're super excited about it. We are interviewing Miss Deanna Jones for our first Ignite night. I am. When I say we, it's me and the mouse in my pocket here at Amadeo Dispatch. And maybe I need
Speaking
to
of mouse in the pocket, at church Sunday, they were upstairs looking at how to set this all up. And there was a mouse. And Miss Deanna was giving orders. Mouse traps, this, that, other, get it up here, hurry, come out. And Tasia just went and picked it up and took it outside. So it was kind of a moment or a moment, or depending on who you are. So yeah,
I didn't even think about it. It was a slow mouse. It was a baby mouse, and I'm pretty sure it was drunk from maybe like some fermented water.
The communion, yeah, communion.
It wasn't that big of a deal, but it was kind of funny because when I walked down, you had all these different faces, and the one guy, he was like, "Why did you release it outside?" I thought, well, I'm not gonna like kill it in front of all these kids and stuff like that.
Take it home and feed it to my snake.
We'll feed it to our cat.
Yeah.
She probably would appreciate that.
She's yeah.
So, yeah. So this concludes the Upside Down Kingdom. We hope that you enjoyed it. We are looking forward to. I'm looking forward to episodes to come. Brett said that he may kind of come in and foresee some others, but he's done for now, which I greatly appreciate him. He's been the greatest guest star.
Wait until she gets my bill.
But we hope that you join us again on episode 5, not episode 6. I'm thinking ahead.
And 6. Maybe even 7.
See you later.